I have a wide network, and I got a call basically saying, look, I've got a spooked law enforcement senior guy, been there like 20 years, unimpeachable record out in Muskegon, Michigan, and he's got a story that we think is worth looking into. And that's exactly what Gateway Pundit's talking about. So I can confirm a lot of the details and give you some more. What ended up happening is, my understanding, I reached out and spoke with some local law enforcement. What happened was there was a woman, my understanding, is basically loitering outside of a drop box all day. And she gets picked up by a junior guy and arrested because he's like, what are you doing? You're stuffing this. What's going on? So they routinely, they arrest her. And she basically spills the beans. She's a Democratic operative. She's got filled out ballots, like 7,000 is what I was hearing, and they arrested her. Now, the senior guy, my understanding, was off at the time. So the junior guy who picked her up, got her statement and released her. And she went back to Detroit. So Muskegon's like the suburbs, Detroit. She went back to Detroit. The senior guy comes back in the next day or later in the day and says, what the hell? You had her dead to rights. Why did you release her? And starts trying to get an extradition order from Detroit because this is before the election. We're hearing there could be voter fraud. And here you've got someone basically copping to it and caught with her hand in the cookie jar. Detroit doesn't give an extradition order. And the next thing you know, everyone clams up. And I'm hearing, well, Benson's leaning on people threatening jobs. So when I hear this in the White House, we've got our eyes out, at least the loyal ones. I try to raise a red flag. I do a little bit of light reaching out, not to disrupt anything, but just to kind of vet and make sure that I'm dealing with people who aren't lying and people who are credible. And then I try to reach out to different components within the Trump administration to say, hey, there's at least probable cause here. I'm an attorney. I've worked on some criminal stuff. There's at least probable cause here. Someone should take a look, talk with the relevant law enforcement, and figure out what happened here. Because just as what happened with Georgia, you've got someone basically copping to voter fraud, and then you get the whole story, and then the next thing you know, they're out in Jamaica or whatever. The Dems have found the person, co-opted them, told them to shut up, and then plugged all the leaks. Well, I got to say, when I raised that issue in the administration, no one was very happy about it. There were basically, my understanding was standing orders not to deal with election matters, both from the White House counsel and from Barr. I happen to know Barr's chief of staff, Will Levy, because I had worked at Heritage and run a lunch basically for Senate staffers, and he'd been a Senate counsel when I was there. So I knew him. I called him up and tried to put the flag up to the voting rights section, CRD, DOJ, and White House counsel in a couple different places, and got stiff-armed. And then later on, hear from Johnny and others that basically then the White House counsel swoops in and starts screaming, what the hell are you guys doing? So that's really the nuts and bolts of it. See a lot of fire, try to raise the flag, and get smacked down by weak Republicans in the deep state. This occurred in sort of early October, and this woman got arrested. She's apparently a known Democratic operative. Got released back accidentally, went to Detroit, and then bizarrely, because, in a state, if you're arrested, if you're in one city and you need to get an arrest warrant in another city in the state, that's usually pretty easy. It's extradition, but it's pretty easy because it's in one state. But just Detroit, I guess, just declined to pick this woman back up. She was very much protected. So this happened in October, and then I remember seeing a very watered-down cover-up police report or public statement by the Muskegon police later, which didn't say anything about them being actual ballots, kind of watered it down to say it might have been blank applications or something like that, which is still shady. But they watered it down and kind of buried the story to cover up the fact of the arrest. But to me, the main thing was that Benson got involved and that she was leaning on these senior people in the county, which is a public corruption issue. You're not allowed to cover up for a crime and threaten people's jobs and say, don't investigate crimes. That's unlawful. The signals I got both through the White House and through the Department of Justice and through the careers of the Department of Justice, it was the same story over and over again. Leadership is not interested in this. we're not even going to make a phone call. And it was very much worth a phone call to, 20-year veteran law enforcement in a state who says, we have evidence of a crime that's relevant to federal jurisdiction. You think you'd give them a phone call. But no, they had no interest. They're covering their eyes and ears. They're giving standing orders, orally, of course, probably nothing in writing, to bury all this stuff. So when the big boss asks the question, are there reports? You can say, no, there are absolutely no reports. We had lots of solid people that wanted to look into these sorts of things. And again, I worked later on the Gableman investigation in Wisconsin. The story's always the same. Our side, our weak Republicans on our side, scuttle investigations, do a half-assed job of it. And then when nothing comes of those investigations, they say, well, see, we told you so. And well, no, it's not because there's nothing there. It's because you actively undermine your own side and our own efforts. And then that supports the left-wing narrative. It demoralizes the base. And it's really just a big part of how the uniparty works.